And I call the Liberal Democrat spokesperson, Jess Brown-Fuller.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I'm glad that the Minister has heard the opposition from across the House, from Honourable and Right Honourable members, and I've got great news for her. She's going to hear it again. An opinion that many of us share across the House and the political divide is our criminal justice system is in complete disarray, with nothing epitomising this more than the backlog in our criminal courts. In our Crown courts, this stands at almost 80,000 cases, with trial dates now stretching late into this decade. The delayed justice, harm to victims and impacts on rehabilitation are a shameful legacy of over a decade of complacent Conservative governments. Their inability to recognise the crisis and steer a new course to fix the system is completely unforgivable. Instead, the Prime Minister ran away from full prisons and a court system in disarray and called a general election in 2024. So although we will be supporting the Conservative motion today, I look forward to hearing many contributions from their backbenchers apologising for not only causing this crisis but also their abject failure to fix it when they actually had the power to do so. I will give way to my honourable friend.
Thanks to my honourable friend for giving way. She's making a very powerful case. Does she agree that it's not the responsibility of jury trials for the court cases piling up to nearly 80,000? And then the real causes are staff shortages, broken estates, and 10 years of Conservative complacency that hollowed out the justice system and left victims waiting years for their day in court.
I thank my honourable friend for her contribution, and she's absolutely right. And we in the Liberal Democrats on these benches have sympathy for the scale of the task that this Labour government has inherited. And we're glad that they do recognise the real losers here, the victims. It is an utter failure of the justice system that victims and defendants are being given court dates for the end of the decade. Years of delay, re-traumatisation, when so many just want justice and then to move on with their lives. But here's the rub. We fundamentally disagree with the government's approach to tackling it. They're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, ignoring the actual issues and targeting a key and celebrated success. Trial by jury is deeply enshrined in our conscience and constitution, respected all over the world. The possibility of being tried by one's peers, not an elite, unrepresentative group of individuals, is fundamental to a fair trial in this country, a point recognised by the Deputy Prime Minister himself in the Lammy Review. The Lammy Review concluded that, unlike other stages of the criminal justice system, jury trials do not show statistical bias against ethnic minorities. The Deputy Prime Minister set out in extreme detail that, compared with magistrates' courts, Crown courts provide an effective check on prejudice and avoid discriminatory verdicts. 12 heads are better than one, a point proven by the increased public trust in jury trials. I will give way to the honourable gentleman.
I'd just like to suggest, in support of what she's been saying, that surely a distinction of which we need to be aware is that whereas the judge is a specialist in deciding what the law says and how it should be applied, he is not a specialist, he or she is not a specialist in deciding whether someone's telling the truth or not. And in that sense, you are far more likely to get the right answer from a group of people considering it together as a collectivity than an individual, no matter how eminent in the intricacies of the law.
Hear, hear. The honourable gentleman makes a very valid and worthwhile point, and I thank him for raising it. It is therefore highly irresponsible and dangerous for this government to pursue efforts to remove the right to trial by jury in most Crown Court cases as a means of fixing the backlog, although we have just heard from the Minister that actually that's not the intention at all. The intention is that she would do it anyway, especially given that the evidence behind those provisions' effectiveness is flimsy. The government claims that this decision... I will give way to my honourable friend.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. I've been contacted by so many KCs and criminal barristers in Winchester, one of them Rosemary Burns, and I think what the collective confusion is why are we removing such a sort of fundamental constitutional entrenched principle rather than focusing on crumbling courtrooms, courtrooms sitting empty due to the cap in the number of days the court can sit, and the failure of prisoner transport to bring defendants to court in time. Why are these logistical and infrastructure issues not being focused on and laser focused on before this is even considered?
Something that I will come on to later in my contribution about the inefficiencies within the system. I will make some progress if he doesn't mind. The government claims that this decision has stemmed from the review undertaken by Sir Brian Leveson, the first part of which was published last year. The objective behind the review, commissioned by this government, was rightly to find solutions to the overwhelming backlog, and Leveson's original suggestion, the creation of a Crown Court bench division, including a judge and 2 magistrates, was modelled to reduce trial length by 20%. I will just finish my point, if she doesn't mind. The government, however, has gone further than Leveson recommended, meaning that those accused of crimes with likely sentences of less than 3 years will, for the most part, not be heard by a jury. New so-called swift courts will be created when just one judge hears cases. The efficiency savings quoted by the government are the same figures suggested by Leveson under his Crown Court bench division model, but the modelling has, like this entire proposal, been widely criticised for lacking transparent data behind the calculations. I will give way on that point.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Would my honourable friend agree with me, a slight confusion, that the Minister consistently referenced the importance of this review and how independent it was and how important it was, and then has actually thrown out the central tenet of it, which was to introduce a court which has a judge and 2 magistrates, which would provide 3 heads rather than 1, some local influence and some lay people. And I wonder if she has any views as to why it is that the Minister is so insistent on this central tenet, given how important this review is.
I thank my honourable friend, who is also a member of the Justice Select Committee, for her very important point about raising that Leveson did not suggest this proposal at all. What he was talking about was a separate division, which the Deputy Prime Minister has announced as a swift court. He has ignored the impact of having 2 lay people as magistrates as part of that. It doesn't make any sense to me, and it doesn't make sense to any people in this room either. I will give way to the honourable gentleman.
Lady for giving way. Does she share my dismay that not only did the Minister admit in her closing remarks that her plans are ideological, not practical, expedient, but also that she spent 30 minutes without talking about the central issue, which is that the majority of cases that are listed in our court crack on day 1, meaning that the courts are there, but nobody is actually working within them. And it's that needs to be sorted out, rather than this maladroit plan to reduce liberties that we've enjoyed for 800 years.
I thank the honourable gentleman for his point, and he preempts what I will be going on to say in my speech. We have yet to see an impact assessment. This has been spoken about by the right honourable gentleman, the Shadow Justice Secretary. It was also mentioned in the amendment that was tabled by the government. If we can see the modelling, the actual impact assessment, and understand where these savings are coming from, and even if the figures are accurate, they avoid the glaringly obvious fact that they're measured currently against a completely inefficient system. A system which is fundamentally not undermined by jury trials, but instead plagued by years of underinvestment, creating an ever-growing list of unaddressed issues across the system. This is a fact that this government currently seems willing to ignore, despite it being present in every piece of discourse surrounding their proposals. They have bought a car that will not run, and they've decided to spend all their time and money on a new paint job before actually opening the bonnet. It is utterly shameful, fundamentally because, despite the narrative that they are advancing, there are alternatives. They do not have to attack jury trials, especially when their own ministers and their own Prime Minister have been fierce advocates of jury trials in the past. Instead, they should be looking at the real issues within the system that have led us to this point. Chief among them is the productivity decline our criminal courts have experienced since 2016, wasted time in and around courts, caused by a wide range of issues, all of which are being ignored by the Ministry of Justice. This means that the increased investment the government has undertaken is being used inefficiently. It also means that many of these issues would persist even if their attack on jury trials does lead to reductions in trial length. The solutions are out there. The majority of legal professionals opposing the government's reforms are overflowing with practical suggestions, but the government is not listening. So today I will lay out some of them here. First, there must be investment in the courts estate, not only to reopen the hundreds of courts closed under the Conservatives, including my court in Chichester, but also to properly maintain those that remain open. The evidence of leaking roofs, foul smells, flooded rooms across the estate is hardly indicative of a properly functioning justice system. This must be addressed. Trials abandoned because the heating isn't working or there is no running water is unacceptable for those victims. Even at a roughest of estimates, the restriction of jury trials will at best save 9,000 sitting days in court a year. This is based on not being able to see an impact assessment. The government could increase the number of sitting days up to the possible 130,000, which would far exceed the apparent savings that they would gain from the removal of trials. The concept of a restriction of sitting days is artificial. If you have a case and a courtroom and a defendant on remand and court staff ready to go, then the case should be heard. Happily give way.
Thank you. I'd just gently point out to the Honourable Lady that this isn't just about a courtroom being available. This is about the resources that have to go into that. So this isn't just do we have the space. This is about do we have the barristers, do we have the solicitors, do we have enough CPS lawyers, do we have enough court clerks, do we have enough ushers. This is a bigger picture, and this is why the whole package that the government is putting forward is incredibly important, because just tinkering around the edges has been done for years, and we are in this crisis now.
I don't disagree with the Honourable Lady when she points out that it does have to be a full package of support, but that's actually not what we're debating today. I am laying out all of those things that she rightly points out, that there are total inefficiencies within our court system, but until we see those situations addressed and those things fixed, then how do we know that we're not going to save the court sitting days that apparently eroding the right to jury trial will do? I will give way to my honourable friend.
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Isleworth Crown Court, which is one of the closest courts to my constituency, last year closed down 5 out of 14 of its courts because of maintenance issues, but also because of the cap on sitting days put in place by the previous Conservative government and only partially lifted by this government. So does she agree with me that as well as addressing all the maintenance issues and the system inefficiency, if we increase the number of court sitting days and address the workforce issues, we could preserve this fundamental right to a jury trial for all?
My honourable friend makes an excellent point, and this government have rightly increased days back to their 2016 levels, but with a rising backlog they need to go further and increase capacity. As pointed out by the secret barrister in his blog, we also have huge delays in the NHS, but you don't see the government proposing a cap on A&E sitting days to save on having the lights on in A&E. Adding to this are the hours lost to unenforceable contracts that have left many trials without a defendant, while everyone waits for them to be delivered from prison. Given that a key argument advanced by the government for reducing jury trials is the increasing length of trials, explicitly linked to complexity, I would urge them to address the impact of these failing contracts. And there are also key efficiencies to be gained in investment in the IT systems, with widespread complaints about functional Wi-Fi and disrupted systems. The common platform system advertised to solve these issues is over budget and still delayed. Serious solutions to address issues like this, instead they are seemingly ignored. And yes, there are costs associated, of course there are, but there are clearly major costs not addressing the issues in the system. For example, it costs £55,000 a year to keep someone in prison, and the number of people in prison on remand has doubled in the last 7 years. So the savings are there as well, they just need to be realised. It is also clear from courts such as Liverpool Crown Court, which I think was mentioned earlier, that efficiencies can be achieved without spending through a proactive and realistic approach. Jamie Hamilton KC has set out steps such as prioritising cases where late guilty pleas are likely, leading to improved outcomes in case clearance. It is unfathomable to me that the government has tasked Brian Leveson with 2 reports, the second of which is to focus on efficiency improvements and the better use of technology in the court system. Surely that is the logical report to have first, to introduce those efficiencies and bring the backlog down. Madam Deputy Speaker, the government has identified the problem they inherited, but they have arrived at entirely the wrong solutions. They are searching for an easy way out, a quick fix, but reducing access to jury trials is not that fix. It is unscrutinised, unfair, and continues the trend of declining public trust in our justice system. The government is right that victims are among those being let down, waiting years for justice and unable to move on with their lives. But we need solutions that work, solutions that address the causes of the crisis, reverse the systematic underfunding that has plagued the system, and genuinely improve efficiency. Thank you.